we're going to dismantle the arguments against this graph by Chris Beardsley. So starting off, Snitch made the claim that you cannot use studies that looked at surgery-induced trauma in rats to make a claim of when the muscle damage repair process starts. So basically just used it as a gotcha, like, haha, he used a rat study, that's bad, never even explaining why. Firstly, I want to say, this field would not exist without animal studies. Secondly, to make it seem like this is the only study that he used to back up his claim that muscle damage repair is not the initial part of MYOPS is disingenuous and shows that you don't even understand his stance fully. So let's talk about why he used this study. So this red line represents what he took from the study. And what the study looked at is non-exercise induced injury, and he wanted to see how long it took for MYOPS to be elevated from non-exercise induced injury. MYOPS, myofibrillary protein synthesis, can reflect both hypertrophy and muscle damage repair, but since we're just looking at non-exercise induced injury, there's not going to be hypertrophy, so it's just going to reflect muscle damage repair. And as you can see, it took 24 hours for MYOPS to become elevated, so it took that long for muscle damage repair to start. This is because after the injury, muscle damage processes have to occur. So the calcium ion accumulation has to happen, which is then going to lead to the release of proteases, which are then going to degrade the muscle fiber structures. And then after that, it's going to lead to an inflammatory response, which is then going to come with another bout of muscle damage. So after all the muscle damage processes are done, then muscle damage repair is going to start. And that's why it's delayed. You might be like, oh, well, I'm not getting injured or anything, so how does that apply? Well, it's the same concept. It's calcium ion accumulation, which is then going to lead to the release of proteases, etc., etc. The same thing as before. He used this to help explain that the first part of MYOPS post-workout is dedicated to hypertrophy. So the initial part of MYOPS is dedicated to hypertrophy and not muscle damage repair because the muscle damage processes are happening during this time. Like, you're not going to have muscle damage repair and the processes for muscle damage happening at the same time. And that study was just one example to help show how muscle damage repair is not the initial part of MYOPS. Like, if you read through his FAQ entry on the topic, then you'll actually understand his stance, which would be a pretty good idea and something that I would do before making a video critiquing it. Like, for example, he shows a study where when you remove the calcium ions out of a muscle fiber immediately post-workout, then you're able to prevent a large proportion of the post-workout fatigue from happening, which tells us that the muscle damage is not happening during the workout. It's happening post-workout. So muscle damage repair would have to happen after it, so it's going to be delayed. It's not going to be the initial part of MYOPS. And then afterwards, she was like, we cannot differentiate the MYOPS for hypertrophy and muscle damage repair in hypertrophy studies. Like, that was never something that he said that you could do. Like, that was never his point. Like, he legit agrees, which is why he says that a useful way to help tell is by looking at when the muscle damage itself happens. But yeah, this is just more cope from the upper-lower army because they don't want their split to be inferior to full body. But yeah, I hope it's helpful more.